Hello and welcome to a new vlog and ship video, and today we're taking a look at a mini cruise with the Mein Schiff 7, Mein Schiff 7. We are going from Warnemünde near Rostock in Germany to Copenhagen in Denmark and back, and here on the map you can see our route today. This was a short weekend cruise I booked already 1.5 years ago just to go to see the rather new ship of TUI Cruises built last year, 2024, and that was one of the first short cruises of this ship. And now I'm showing you a way to get from Rostock main station to the cruise terminal. Of course, you can just simply take the S-Bahn directly to Warnemünde and the station is right next to the terminal. But there is also a different way, because I had to leave my hotel at 12 and I was allowed to check in at the ship at 2, so I had 2 hours to spend. Therefore I decided to take the tram to Kreuz. From there you can take the bus 18 to Hohe Düne Fähre. This is just on the other side of Warnemünde, and there's a ferry going between Warnemünde and Hohe Düne. So of course you can take the S-Bahn and then the ferry to exactly this point where I'm right now, because here you can take amazing pictures. But if you have time to spend, you can also take the tram and the bus to get there. Here we can see the ferry of Scandlines coming from Gedser in Denmark. And here we can see the beautiful Mein Schiff 7, Mein Schiff 7 or My Ship 7, completely translated. Beautiful brand new cruise ship, just a little more than 1 year old. And we're now heading on board. Therefore I'm now taking the ferry to the other side. Ferries are going usually every 10 minutes, so that was also no problem at all. And from the other side it's just a walk of around 5 minutes to the cruise terminal. Check-in was very easy and fast. I think this was one of the fastest check-ins I ever had on a cruise ship. It took me not even 10 minutes from entering the terminal to being on board, including check-in and security check, so that was working very well. And here you can see my very small inside cabin. It is a single cabin with a size of only 8 square meters, so it's the smallest and cheapest cabin category. I booked this, of course, to save a little bit of money that I would rather spend on board. And that's exactly what this cabin is for. If you don't want to spend too much for the cruise itself, and you don't need a huge cabin, you can book this cabin. And of course, if you come in for the first time, it looks very small, but it takes 10 minutes and you're used to it, and it's actually an amazing cabin. I really loved it because it has everything you need. It has a desk, it has a lot of storage space. Here you have a big wardrobe with a lot of storage. There's also a safe, hairdryer, you have a power socket at the desk, you have this little pocket here right next to the bed where you can put your phone in the night, you have a power socket above it, you have a USB power socket at the reading light, which is above your head, and then a little bit higher above your head you have additional storage space. And then if we take a look to the other side of the bed, we have a lot more storage space. We have the Nespresso coffee machine, we have a carafe to get water from the water stations outside the cabins, you have a big TV, of course individually controllable air condition, and the bathroom is pretty big compared to the size of the cabin because it's a standard bathroom, which is also very nice, coming with a lot of storage space and of course everything you need. So it is a very nice cabin. And of course, then it was time for the mandatory safety drill. You have to watch a video and then you have to go to your assembly station. Then I enjoyed a nice doner kebab and went to the gym, and then it was time for the demonstration of the emergency signal. It was quite nice in the gym because it is a short cruise and Mein Schiff offers all-inclusive, and that means there are a lot of party people on board, and therefore almost nobody was in the gym. And after doing some sports, it was already time for the sail away. It was very nice because it was a port party again, and therefore it was an even more spectacular sail away. difficult to find a place at the sun deck because the sun deck was quite crowded and I arrived slightly too late to get a good place, but I found a spot and enjoyed sailing away during the port party, and of course we heard several ship horns on our way out. Also, the fireboat was here again, bidding farewell with the fountain once again. There was, due to the nice weather again, a beautiful rainbow around the fire ship, so that was a beautiful sight again. But, mentioned before, all-inclusive short cruise means party people on board. I've never seen the bars on a cruise ship being flooded with people like on this cruise, so I decided to leave the sun deck, because sometimes you just need to do the opposite of what everybody's doing. So I went to the lower decks and there was almost nobody, the bars were empty, and there was even a spot on the promenade on the sun lounger directly in the sun next to a bar where I got a nice drink and then could enjoy the sun without party people around me. It was just a nice and calm afternoon in the sun. I was watching the Scandlines ferry and I was taking a look back to Rostock and Warnemünde. When it got a bit colder, I went inside, and as you can see also inside, the Schaubar, one of the biggest bars on board, was almost completely empty. The sun lounges on the promenade were empty, so it's always a good idea to do the opposite of that, what most people are doing, and then you feel like you're on a small luxurious cruise ship and not on a big ship with almost 3,000 passengers. For the sunset I went out again to enjoy the beautiful view, but then it was slowly time to head to my restaurant. I spontaneously made a reservation in the La Spezia restaurant, because you can already check in the app what's offered in the main dining rooms, and I didn't like the menu that much of that day, so I decided spontaneously that it's maybe a good idea to visit the restaurant with the nicest view. And as you can see, I was very lucky. I got one of the best tables with the view over the stern wave into the sunset, so that was fantastic. And I also opted for a big menu with 5 courses. If you take the 5-course menu, you can choose 3 starters, 1 main course and 1 dessert from the menu, and I went for a carpaccio, vitello tonato and a tomato soup as a starter, saltimbocca as a main course, and then I also had a nice dessert with strawberries and ice cream. So it was a very nice menu. Of course it's not cheap and it's not fine dining, so it's quite expensive compared to the Rossini at Aida where you get a higher quality, but still it was a very nice evening. When I came back to my cabin, I was greeted by a towel elephant, and here you can see one downside of the cabin. This is the view from the bed, and no, I didn't forget to turn off the light in the bathroom, but you can't turn it off. Here you can see it. If you turn it off, there's still like a little emergency light, which probably should show you where the exit is, which in my opinion is not very necessary in an 8 square meters cabin. So I had to tear apart the elephant and put the towel into the door, and then it was dark because I really needed dark inside the cabin. There's also the possibility to turn off the electricity in the cabin, but then you have a green light next to the door, so same problem. I think it's not that bad in a bigger cabin, but here, because the mirror is right opposite of the door, the bathroom, it's too bright in my opinion. The next morning I had a nice cup of coffee in the cabin, and then I made my ship tour that you saw in the last video. Woke up around 5 o'clock, and around 5:30 I started my ship tour, and I was rewarded with this beautiful sunrise on the ship's bow, so that was a fantastic and beautiful moment. And of course it was also nice because all the party people were still sleeping. It was very peaceful morning, and of course if you only stay 2 nights on a ship, every hour counts, so it was a good idea to get up early. After a nice breakfast, we arrived in Copenhagen, sailed past Yatania and docked right next to the Aida Luna. We were lucky we were allowed to dock at the Lange Linie, which is very close to the city center. You can even walk into the city center, so it's the best docking location that Copenhagen offers. And first I walked past Aida Luna cruise ship I was also traveling on already. There's also a video about that ship. And then I headed firstly to a train station and filmed some train videos. You will see them in the upcoming days. And then I went into the city center. Of course, I've been to Copenhagen multiple times, but still, it is a very, very beautiful city with good shopping opportunities, so I didn't want to miss it completely. And therefore, after traveling by train, I decided to head into the city center, and we can see some of the beautiful buildings here in the city center of Copenhagen. There are a lot of nice stores. There are also some big shopping centers like this one here. It's not as good as Galeries Lafayette in Paris, KaDeWe in Berlin or Harrods in London, but it is also very beautiful with a nice architecture. It's a high-class shopping center on the main shopping street. Here we can see the opera, and after that we are reaching Nyhavn, which is one of the main tourist sites. As you can see, it was very, very crowded, but still it's a beautiful part of the city. Then I continued on to Castle Amalienborg, crossed the square and headed to the ships again. On the way between Amalienborg and the ships, you're also coming past this beautiful fountain, and then we're slowly approaching the Little Mermaid. And yes, maybe you should see the Little Mermaid once in your life, but to be honest, for me it's one of the most disappointing sides of the city because it is crowded with tourists and it's just so tiny. It could be also in a small village on a fountain. It's not spectacular and I don't know why it's that famous, but maybe you should see it at least once in your life so you can make the experience for yourself and decide that it's not necessary to come back again, but it was on my way so I walked past it. And here I am back at the beautiful Mein Schiff 7. There was even a welcome back drink, and in my cabin there was another towel animal waiting for me, a little bear this time. I went then to the buffet restaurant for lunch, and right opposite of us was the Nordic Crown. It's a ferry of the Go Nordic cruise line. Early on it was DFDS. There's also a video on my channel of the ship when it was sailing for DFDS. And as the sun deck was again very crowded, I decided to do the same thing like yesterday and do what for sure party people on an all-inclusive ship are not doing, and that is paying for drinks. So I went to a non-included bar and I got a very nice seat with a perfect view. Of course I had to pay for my drinks as well, but it was worth the relaxing atmosphere without noisy people. So Champagner-Treff was the best place to be. I also had some nice drinks and watched Aida Luna sailing away first, sailing past us and heading back to Kiel. She was going a different route. There are two ways to go from Copenhagen to Germany. She was heading south, we were heading to the north first, and then we are going under the Great Belt Bridge. Here we can also see a waterplane and we can watch Aida Luna leaving Copenhagen. So Aida Luna, also a ship I've been on, and so it was very nice to see her again. Leaving first, that was quite nice, so she was sailing past us. And the third ship in our port today was Atania. So there were 3 German ships in port today, all leaving almost at the same time. Atania was leaving a little bit earlier than the other ones, and we were the last one to leave, but we just left a couple of seconds after Aida Luna. Here we can see the waterplane after it took off, doing a panoramic flight over Copenhagen, and now it's also time for us to say goodbye to Denmark and head back to Germany. I was watching the whole sail away from my comfortable chair at the Champagner-Treff. It was a beautiful sail away, even though it was end of September. Temperatures were quite high, there was a lot of sun, so I was sitting there in a t-shirt. It was perfect and very relaxing sail away. And I was quite happy that I was not in the crowds on the sun deck here, just with a couple of people in the Champagner-Treff. In the background we can see the Öresund Bridge. That's the direction which Aida Luna is now heading, but we are going in the other direction, sailing past Helsingør and Helsingborg soon, and watching some interesting ships here in and around the port of Copenhagen. Here we can see the skyline of Copenhagen again, and here we can see Aida Luna heading in the other direction. And in the meantime there was a rip boat following us, enjoying our stern wave, having some fun there. And yeah, I was still enjoying some nice drinks here in the Champagner-Treff. As I mentioned in my ship tour, they only have champagne-based drinks and some high-class cocktails. Here we can see a ferry to the island of Ven that already belongs to Sweden. We're also now on the Swedish side of the Öresund. Here we can see the island of Ven, and here we can see the mainland of Sweden. And we're now approaching Helsingør and Helsingborg, and there are some passenger ferries between those two cities. And of course there are also some bigger car ferries. And there are videos about all of these ships, but I think they're only in German because they are quite old. I took them a couple of years ago. Here we can see Helsingborg in Sweden, and here we can see the castle Kronborg in Helsingør, and here we can see one of the ferries which is now operated by Öresundslinjen. And then it was time for dinner. This time I went to Atlantic Mediterranean, a restaurant. Here you can see some tartare, which was 6 euros extra. In my opinion, should have been a bit more for that price, but it was still very tasty. And of course the rest was included. You get 5 courses here in the main restaurant, and they were all very nice and tasty. So food quality on board is very, very good. Really enjoyed dinner. And then I still had some time left. I wanted to watch a show in a theater, and in the meantime I went up into the gym, and that was a quite nice idea because I was the only one there. Of course, that's again the advantage of a party cruise. The people are here to drink, to have fun, but they are not doing sports, at least not many people, so I had the gym for myself. Here we can see the color Fantasy of Color Line coming from Kiel, heading on to Oslo in Norway. It was unfortunately not a lot to film during the show, but it was a very nice show, an ABBA show. And after that I went up to the sun deck. There was a Schlager party. As you can see, a lot of people were dancing, but I was going for a more quiet place in the Hohe Luftbar, watching some ships. Here we can see a ferry of Stena Line going to Gothenburg in Sweden, coming also from Kiel in Germany, and then we were approaching the Great Belt Bridge. We've seen that bridge in multiple videos this year already, but it's always impressive to see. And Mein Schiff 7 is also a quite high ship, so there's not too much space left, so that was quite spectacular to see. Here we're going under the bridge, and I was also waiting for 3 cruise ships to pass us, and I've been on all 3 of them. Unfortunately, Aida Nova was going only with half of the speed of the other ones because they had a different schedule. So I missed her because I would have to stay awake for at least 1 more hour, but at least I saw Aida Diva. I was traveling on that beautiful ship this year. She was the first one of the Sphinx class of Aida to get renovated, so I was traveling on her just a few months ago, so it was very nice to see her again. And just a few minutes later we also passed the MSC Eurybia, another ship I was traveling on. MSC has a comparable interior design like Mein Schiff, at least. If you take one of the new and big ships, of course the old ships are more colorful, but the new ones have a similar design like Mein Schiff. But of course they are much bigger and have a very different concept when it comes to entertainment, when it comes to food. So of course they're not comparable in other ways, but the design is at least a little bit comparable. And you can find a ship tour of Aida Diva and of the MSC Eurybia here on my channel. And then I went back to the Schlager party, which was about to end, and continue in the Abtanzbar. And as you can see, big crowd, a lot of people dancing. Of course that's not the case normally on a cruise with Mein Schiff, but of course on a short cruise it's always like that. My cabin was right below the Abtanzbar, but I didn't hear anything from it. Well, my cabin is slightly in front of it, so maybe in the cabins behind it you might hear something, but I'm not sure about this. But in my cabin you didn't hear anything. On the next morning we had to leave the cabins at 9, so I left my luggage in the theater at 9 and then went up to the Ankelmannsplatz buffet restaurant. After a nice breakfast I picked up my luggage again and it was time to leave the ship and head to the train station and going back home. When you leave the ship, just 10 minutes later you're already sitting in a train. In this case there were also no controls by customs, so it was all very, very fast. and here I'm already on board the train and we are leaving Warnemünde. It was a fantastic cruise, it was very relaxing. Of course I had to wake up at 5 in the morning on the second day to make my ship tour, but of course that's not what a usual passenger would do. So if I ignore that, it was a very relaxing cruise. Even though it was short, it was very nice. Of course there are very special passengers on board. There's a lot of party people, a lot of drinking, and a lot of passengers were extremely drunk, and not in a fun way anymore, but very drunk and too drunk. That's of course something that only happens on those short cruises. On a regular cruise with the Mein Schiff you have very different people. It's a very calm and relaxing atmosphere on board. And also this cruise was very nice. Just ignoring these few too drunk people, but otherwise it was a very nice experience. I really enjoyed it. That's it for this video. In the next video we will be traveling by train in Denmark. Here you can see when this video will be uploaded and the name of the song. As always, I'd like to say thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to comment, like, subscribe or share the video link, and I hope to see you in my next video then.